Hello everyone and welcome to your English class, and today we will be discussing about the last part of the lesson, the last lesson. So in our previous part we came to know that all the villagers were extending their support to M Hamel আৰু তেওঁলোকে M Hamelৰ লাষ্ট ক্লাছটো এটেণ্ড কৰিবলৈ আহিছিলে আৰু সেইদিনাখন এম হেমেলে বৰ ধুনীয়াকৈ তেওঁলোকক গ্ৰামাৰ বুজাইছিলে এণ্ড দে অলছ' আণ্ডাৰষ্টুড ইট ভেৰি ইজিলি এণ্ড let's see what happened next. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamel had new copies for us, written in a beautiful round hand, Friends Elsek, Friends Elsek. So, after the grammar, they had a lesson in writing, okay? Maybe handwriting, and M. Hamel had given them new copies, and in the cover of the copies, he had written Friends Elsek, Friends Elsek. They look like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hang from the rod at the top of our decks. So, you ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. The only sound was the stretching of the pens over the paper. So everything was very silent on that day, and only the sounds that was coming or they can hear is the scratching of the pens over the papers. That means the writing sound of everyone, okay? Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on the tracing their fish hooks as if there was friends too. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? So, there were only the sounds of the pens over the papers, and also some beetles that flew in the classroom, but nobody paid any attention. কোনেও ইমান ধ্যান নিদিলে বাহিৰা বস্তুবিলাকত, and even the small kid also, okay? And there was pigeon in the classroom, and on the roof the pigeon cooked very low, so they make a very low noise, okay? And Franz thought to himself that the order had come from Berlin that French will be not taught in the school, only German will be taught, isn't it? So now he thought that will the order or will the German people will make the peasant also sing in German. So he thought that every individual, even if it is a human or birds or animals, even they will have to speak in German, or even if they will have to sing in German. So this shows the independence of the individual of the France people. That means they have no independence to choose their own rights, to choose their own voices, okay? Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. And when Franz চবে লিখি আছিলে আৰু সেই সময়ত ফ্ৰান্সে লিখিলে যে এম হেমেল was sitting motionless, so he had not moved from his place, okay? এটা জেগাতে বহি আছিল, and he was looking around, and he had worked in that school for 40 years, so he was looking around the little schoolroom, and he had a little garden outside the window, and in front of the garden it was his class, okay? Just like that. Only the decks and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hope pine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. And in that garden there was walnut trees and hope pine, okay? আৰু সেই walnut trees জোপা বহুত বেছি ডাঙৰ হ'ল, and the hope fine যোনটো লতা হয় সেই লতাটো কি হ'ল উইণ্ডোজ পৰা গৈ they had touched the roof. Okay, how it must have broken his heart to leave it all. Poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks for they must leave the country next day. So they also heard that in the next room M. Hamel's sister was packing their stuff. Okay, so তেওঁলোকে packing কৰি আছিলে next day কিয়নো তেওঁলোকে countryখন এৰিব লাগিব. Okay, M. Hamel should leave the country and he should move to another country. See the next, but he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted their Babi Bi Bobu. So that means after having first they had grammar and they had writing lesson, and now they are having a lesson in history. Okay, so the babies centered their baby. So in their class the small kids also there, so they don't know how to pronounce. Okay, so this sounds babi bi bobu, this is just the sounds of the babies, random sounds that they make. Okay, down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles and, holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that he too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. And how well I remember it, that last lesson. So the villagers was also in the class. So the old Hauser, he had put down his spectacles and, holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. So he also had made the sound that the babies make. Okay, old Hauser, he don't know how to read and write, but he also repeated the sound the babies chanted, and all in the classroom wanted to laugh, but they didn't laugh because it was their last lesson. And they wanted to laugh and cry at the same moment. Okay, so all at once the church clock struck 12, then the Angelus. The same moment the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill sounded under our windows. M. Hamel stood up, very pale, in a chair. I never saw him look so tall. So when the clock struck 12, যেতিয়া 12 বাজিছিল তেতিয়া at the same moment কি হৈছিলে, চাৰ্চ ক্লকটো বাজিছিলে, and then the same moment the trumpets of the Prussians returning from the, that means the soldiers, army বিলাক return হৈছিলে, and M. Hamel stood up very pale in his chair. So M. Hamel চকীত থিয় হৈ সবকে চাইছিলে, and he told, my friends, said he, I, but something shocked him. He could not go on, and he wanted to say something. তেওঁ কিবা ক'ব বিচাৰিছিলে কিন্তু ক'ব নোৱাৰিলে. Okay, then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could, Vive la France. So he can't speak a word. তেওঁ একো ক'ব নোৱাৰিলে, লাষ্টত তেওঁ ব্লেকবোৰ্ডত লিখিছিল Vive la France, that means long live France. Okay, then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word he made a gesture to us with his hand, school is dismissed, you may go. So he couldn't say a word. Okay, তেওঁ ইমানেই হুকে খুন্দা মাৰি ধৰিছিল যে তেওঁ একো ক'বই নোৱাৰিলে, and তেওঁ হাতেৰে মাত্ৰ ইশাৰা কৰিলে, school is dismissed, you may go, then you can go now. Okay, so this is the end of your lesson. I hope you all understood it.